And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel. Gamelin Games is highly known for their Tiny Epic series, and some of the Tiny Epic games I have liked and some I have not enjoyed as much, and I've always said the same thing on each of them. Why does it need to be tiny? I'd rather just an epic game. Well, I don't know if they listen to me or not. Probably highly doubt that, but either way, it feels like they were like, yeah, Tom? Well, this is just epic. It really is. This is Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. It is a gigantic box. This is a box that doesn't even fit on my shelves behind me. I don't know where I'm going to store it. Am I giving away my feelings? But Heroes of Land, Air, Sea. At the top, it says Explore, Expand, Exploit, Exterminate. Also useful because in reviews of 4X games, I always forget what they stand for. This is close to like a real-time strategy game that you would play where you're sending out units to collect resources and go fight other people. It is a 1 to 4 player game. You can play this solo. A 1 to 4 player game with expandability to play 5 or 6 players. So I don't have any experience on adding the extra players to it, and I'm not sure I do because this game takes up a huge amount of table space. This is truly epic. I mean, I would have been fine if they had called this Epic Heroes Land, Air, Sea. But just because something's big and grandiose doesn't mean it's a good game. Let's take a look. I want to be clear that I'm not going to explain every rule of the game here, but I want to give you a basic overview of how the game works. Now, in this game, you're trying to get the most points, and players have a point tracker here, which flips over to 50 if you need to do so. The game is going to be triggered by 4 different possibilities. There are these different tokens on the board, exploration tokens, that when you go into them, you'll reveal them, and something will happen to you. If every token on the board has been revealed, that's one way the game will end, through exploration. Expansion's another way. If you manage to get all of your serfs and warriors in play somehow, then that's another way the game ends. Each player has 3 towers. Each tower must be built on a different continent, and if you have all 3 of your towers in play, then the game ends. That is exploitation. And if you destroy or attack and defeat your opponent's capital, that will also end the game. At that point, players will total up their points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. There are 4 factions in the game. There are the orcs, there are the elves, and the humans, and the dwarves. Each person's going to have a board set up in front of them with all your components. You have different warriors. You have 3 heroes. You have a card that matches each of those heroes. You start with a handful of cards for when you're attacking another player. We'll talk more about those in a bit. And the most important thing is you're going to start with 2 serfs and a warrior and 2 action tokens in your courtyard. Now, the way the game is going to work is when it's your turn, you're going to take one of these action tokens and pick one of the actions at the top of the board. You can pick any one you want unless you already have a token in that area. Now, these actions over here, a capital action, if you do an action here, each other player may also do that action if they put one of their serfs into that spot. So that's a way to use your serfs to take an action that someone else has. It can give you more than your 2 actions. You cannot do that with command actions. However, if you take a command action, you can put one of your own serfs in another command action to take 2 of them. So I might want to march and sail, or march twice. And so the more serfs you have in your courtyard, the more actions that you can take. The first action is going to be recruit. To recruit, you're going to be getting more serfs, more warriors, and possibly other things, your heroes on the board. However, to have your heroes, you need to have a building into play. When you recruit somebody, you can normally just recruit 1 person, except serfs you can recruit 2. You pay whatever it costs. So a warrior costs 2 food, 1 serf costs 1 food, 2 serfs cost 3 food. This cannoneer costs 3 food and 2 ore. Each player has resources over here that they will be keeping track of on their track to show how many they have. And so you can recruit, and you'll be adding that person to your courtyard. Another thing you can do to get more resources, we'll go to the last thing here, is to tax. when you tax, you're going to be looking at the bottom of the board here, and you're going to get the number that each token's on. So if I taxed bread, I can pick one of them. So I'll tax bread, and I'll get 4 bread. If I really want the red resource, I can tax that one and get 2 of them. After everyone is done taxing, because remember other players can do your action too, you then simply will rotate everything so the amounts you're going to be getting are going to be changing. And you can't have more than 10 of a resource on the track. The next thing you can do is you can build. Now there's a couple ways that you can build. You can build your capital up. So each player has a capital on the board, and if they pay the required number of resources, they will be able to build level 2 and level 3 of their capital. Now these are very expensive. You can see here this one is going to cost 444 for level 2, and level 3 is going to cost 7, 7, and 7 resources of each. However, when you build these, all your units on the board who have special abilities, like your Marauder here has a special ability, they get more special abilities depending on how big your capital is. So the better your capital, the more special abilities that you will have. You can also build these buildings here. So the Blacksmith Monastery, Mead Hall, Sea Dock, and Air Spire, these buildings, and that just simply costs 3 of the ore plus 1 of your serfs. So you're actually going to have to use a serf, and that serf's going to be stuck there the rest of the game, but that shows you that that building is built. As I said, once these buildings are built, you will then have access to recruiting your 3 special characters. Each of the 3 characters comes with their own card. One side just gives you some background and it tells you how much it costs to recruit them. But on the other side, it has their character, the stats on that character, and special abilities, which will increase based on how much your capital has been built. The last thing you can build are towers, and the towers are going to be able to be, once you build a tower on the board, it's as if they're adjacent to your capital, so you'll be able to pour people out of towers if you get them built, and that's one of the requirements to ending the game. As you build and do these different things, they're also worth points. You'll see as you get your capital up, it's 5 and 10 points. Each building you build is 1 point, and the different troops that you have are also worth points. You also have the opportunity to build your boat and your flying unit, and you can see the different costs to build those, and of course you need the matching buildings to do them. So building is an important action, as is recruiting and taxing. The last action there is research. The game comes with a small deck of magic cards. You're going to be drawing one of these at the end of every turn, but you're going to be wanting to use these cards. And there's one of the actions on the other side of the board that is going to let you cast these research cards and let you play them into play, and you can also scribe them. Now, scribing a card lets you get a point, and you can only scribe as many cards as you have levels of a capital. But once you scribe a card, so let's say I have this summon ability here, which lets me take 1 serf from my supply and place it in any region. Once I scribe a spell, I can use it every 3 turns. What that means is, when I use it, I turn it upside down. At the end of the round, I rotate it, and at the end of the next round, I turn it back, and then I can use it again. So scribing a spell not only is worth points, by the way, casting a spell is worth points too, but it allows you to keep a spell that you really like and use it over and over and over again. And like I said, there's all sorts of spells: Earthquake, Weaken, Copy Spell, Fireball, Tithe, Scry, Magic Arrow. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. Now, besides your capital actions, you also have the command actions. And this is basically, there's 2 marches, which lets you move troops on the board. There's a sail, which lets you move your boat. There's fly, which lets you move your airship. And then there's cast, which lets you cast spells. When you're moving, usually you're going to be moving out of your capital, and you'll move people out of your courtyard. When you move into an area with one of these tokens, you will reveal it and see what it does. This one here happens to give me a resource. Sometimes they're negative, sometimes you'll find enemies, different things going on, and there is a whole sheet included with the game that tells you what all the different things do. Although after you play for a while, you'll pretty much recognize, hey, it's resources, and oh yeah, I know that one, that's a fort. It gives, it gives me +1 when defending. If you have your serfs out on the board, at the end of every round, they're going to be giving you resources of the areas that they're in. And they'll give you extra resources if they move into that spot. A warrior will give you a resource too. but the serfs can go into these circles on the board and get you extra resources of that type. And there's other special abilities that you can do that give you even more resources. If you move into an area with someone else, well, that's when you're going to have combat. Now, on each player board, you have a couple stats here for the different people. We have a movement stat here, so the warriors can move 3, serfs can move 2. If you move a group of people, they always move the smallest number of spaces. There's some spots on the board where you have to stop moving when you go into them. If you have a ship, the ship can actually carry 2 people, so I can move a ship around and carry these guys. Apparently they're taking a nap now. The other stat here is your strength in combat. So you can see a warrior gives 2, while my cannoneer gives 4. And so the different stats that I have, you will add all those up when you have a fight, but each player is also going to play a tactic card and possibly a spell card if it's allowed to be played in the middle of a battle. When you play your tactic card, at the top, it's going to show you how much it's going to add to your military total. But they're also going to do other things. So if I play retreat, I can't win. And to play a retreat, I also need to pay 2 bread, but I can get all my units and run away, and I lose 2 victory points. But if my opponent plays charge, that will cancel retreat. Also, a charge is 5, but it's +2 if your opponent played first strike. First strike is +3 against siege. Siege can only be played if you're the attacker. It's +1 if you're attacking a tower, +3 against capital cities, +4 against charge. So you're going to sit here and try to figure out which one's the best one to play. You can always play fight. Fight is free. It doesn't do anything extra. It's just first person. The army against army. First strike is good because it gives me an extra 2, but it costs 4 of the green resource. And if my opponent's playing a siege, now it becomes a 5. So you're kind of sitting here. Conscripts lets you pull people from adjacent regions into attacking. Barricade is only good as a defender. So you're going to pick one of these cards to play. You reveal it. The losers units, they have to lose half of their strength, essentially. They could rebuild them. And then the rest are forced to retreat. If you have a tower in a region, that's going to add to the defense. Your castle also adds to defense. To attack someone else's castle, it's not impossible to do, but it adds a lot of military strength. You can see here a level 3 castle adds 8 military strength to your defense. I also should mention that you can have only as many towers on the board as your level of castle, and you can only have as many spell cards in your hand as level of castle. That's pretty much it. Doing all these things, winning battles is going to give you victory points. Building units is going to give you victory points. Some of the exploration tiles give you victory points. Just essentially building a big army, getting stuff out there is going to give you victory points. And once one of the 4 victory conditions has been met, the game is over. Now the box for this game is humongous. There's a lot of different pieces inside it, and it comes with trays that hold all the plastic miniatures. The plastic miniatures themselves, I think, are really nicely done. They look great. I like how the heroes have a different look to them, although you might have to explain to people occasionally what your hero does. I mean, some are pretty obvious, like the guy with the cannon is going to look much different than the other heroes. But, you know, of course, these would look better painted. But for the most part, just, I mean, astounding way all this is put together. I don't know if I'm going to keep these plastic trays because I'd rather just keep my stuff in bags inside the game. But just these boards themselves have a lot of information on them. I have not really messed with the other side of the board, which is the automated side. This is where if you're playing solo, you can play and it'll tell you kind of how this faction will act. But on this side itself, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of information. Happily, this information is the same on each player's board, as is this and as is the top and stuff. It's this here that's going to be different per faction. And so each of the factions, from the dwarves, the orcs, the elves, and the humans, they have a very distinct look to them. Each of the factions plays very differently, but there's also the boards that come with this game. So there's also some solo cards you see dropping out there. The board itself is really nice. I like the artwork on the board, but at the same time, it's really easy to see what kind of terrain it is. But it's also not just like Catan. This is a very beautiful look to it. Finally, there are these. You have to put these together, but they're not. It's not the end of the world. They, and they stay together pretty well. you're able to fit all these back into the original box when put together. And while they might look a little dorky in some ways, like this doesn't really look like a dragon, but it's made so that it can hold, your piece inside it, which I like. I like how that works. So, when this is flying around and then this guy jumps out to fight, I find that sort of thing pretty cool. And then the castles, of course, the way that they stack is really nice. So here you stack that little piece on top of that and that one on there, and that just looks really good on the board. This has a really cool three-dimensional look, really an A+ here for the components. Wow, there's a lot to talk about here. So first of all, I already said the production of this game, gorgeous, amazing, fantastic. It looks the part. Now, you might complain and say these are the four basic, humans, elves, orcs, and dwarves. And I get that maybe it's a bit generic, although if you look at there's an expansion for it that adds 4 more factions, and there's smaller expansions that add stuff, and that's for other reviews, but there is more stuff for it. I looked at the boards and I said, well, that's weird. They made all the stats for everybody the same. Like my hero, this one hero, has the same stats as your hero. But really, once you look at all the special abilities, the game really has a much higher diversity than I initially thought. I mean, like a ton. Now, this is probably my biggest negative with the game, and it's not even that strong of a negative, is that there is so much going on each person's board that occasionally you have to say, wait a minute, what does your hero there do? What special abilities does he have? Because that sort of information is useful to know when you're going to go attack somebody. And so after a while you will learn, you have your own board, you have all your stuff there, but you don't necessarily know all the special abilities of the other person. Like, wait a minute, why did you just get 3 extra resources? Because my board here allows it to do so. So that's one thing. The game is definitely going to have that learning thing as you go through. The tokens could also be included in that, but really, in the first game I played of this, we were learning what those tokens were. Like halfway through the game, you're like, oh yeah, I know what that token does. And the sheet's not too hard. I was a little concerned about the tokens because one of my favorite games, Twilight Imperium, it has an expansion, Distant Suns, where there are these tokens and you go there, something random happens, and I hate it because sometimes the thing's so negative. Here it's not so bad. There are negative things, but they're not awfully negatives, and many of them can be countered by paying resources and such. And there's also a lot of positive things. So the game really kind of says, go out and explore. The game certainly has the feeling of real-time strategy games. I've played many of them. I haven't played them maybe in the last 5 or 6 years. But before that, I used to play these all the time. And it has that thing, what are you going to do? Let's start building a bunch of peons, serfs, let's get them out there so that they can start getting more resources in. Or I can decide to build someone who can go out and attack and maybe go out and go on the offensive a little bit because my opponent is not building attack units. And of course, if I do that, then they have to also. The game has the magic system, which I really like how that works. Essentially, you have these cool magic cards. They do things. They cost resources. And you have to say, do I want to scribe it and then keep using it over and over again? Or do I want to just use it one time now and just get more cards and deal with that? And that's a good decision to make. I don't know which of the 4 victory conditions will happen the most. They really feel like they're all equally possible. To discover all the land on the board is going to take a while, especially if one player is not doing it as much as the other players. To go and attack someone else's base is a big deal, but it's possible. You can get the units and go in and do it. To build the 3 towers is hard because you put a tower out there and someone else is going to go, ooh, that's a juicy target. I might go after it. And to have all your stuff on the board is going to take a while. You have to get like a nice little engine going. The serfs themselves, you sit there and go, okay, I can build buildings with these. But every time you build a building with a serf, that you're taking that serf out of play, which means then you need to get more serfs. And the serfs are out there allowing you to take extra actions and things like that. The action phase is good. At first, we found it a little bit confusing. It's like you can follow someone on this side, and on this side, you follow yourself, take an extra action. And that took some getting used to. And you say, I'm taking this action. Who else is taking it? Me, not me. Okay. And then we take the action. I'm taking this action. Who else is taking it? But it does flow pretty smoothly. And it means you could be involved in the game even when it's not your turn. And that the game plays, it's not a short game by any means. It says 30 minutes per player. So you're talking a good 2 hours. And I think that that's reasonable, might even be a little on the short end, depending on how thinky some of the actions are. But in that 2 hours of play, you are involved much of the time. You are saying, oh, you're doing that. Me, I'm taxing too. You're going there. And sometimes the other player is doing something. You're like, okay, finish your turn. But it's not long. I'm going to build. What are you building? I'm building that. I'm not building this turn, but your building action is going to take you 30 seconds. Let's go on to the next thing. War. Now, the war in this game is like this super advanced rock, paper, scissors. And it can be mathy. Because there's no dice involved, you're going to sit there and say, okay, I have 6 attacking your 4. Great. What card do I play? This one will give me that. But if I play this card, they will play that. How much resources do they have? Well, they can't even play that card. And so the pre-planning for the battle is simply turning a card over and resolving it with the possibility of some magic spells being cast. But other than that, it's just turning a card over and resolving it. Add the numbers, you win. But it's the thinking about it. You're sitting there going, okay, I'll play that. Well, they might play that siege card. They might retreat, so I should play this. And so there's the whole, well, they might play this, so I'll play this. But they might know I'm going to do that, so they'll play this one. There's a little bit of that. But you can also narrow down choices by seeing your resources, their resources. Some cards can't be played in some situations. So it's an intriguing affair. And then, of course, there's also the other modifiers that you have to throw in, like, oh, your dragons are +2, and this guy gives a +3 when he's alone, things like that. So you have to know all that. And some people may be put off by the mathiness of these battles. I mean, it's not complex, right? But it's just sitting there and saying, okay, do we have all the modifiers? Boom, battle's done. But I'm also glad for that, too, because that means this game isn't focused on combat. Combat is in this game, and it certainly is going to happen, right? And it certainly is a game where it's going to feel annoying when someone comes and hits you and steals your lands. And there's that whole, hey, he's hitting me, now his stuff's open, you should go in. And there's going to be some meta gaming around the table. But it flows in easily with the whole building. When I played real-time strategy games, half the fun came from building up a really cool thing. The other half of the fun came from tearing down the other person's really cool thing they build up. Well, that's in this game. And so I really like this. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. It has a unique feel. I don't think there has been a game that has successfully pulled off that RTS aspect in a board game yet. I think this one has. This one has that 4X feel in 2 hours, which is very rarely done. They're usually big, long, grandiose games. And the 4 factions in this game, and I'm imagining the other factions and stuff, they're very different and unique. You're going to play each one slightly different, and it has a good feel to it. But at the same time, jumping from one faction to the other won't mess you up either. It's like, oh, I don't know how to play the dwarves. I've been playing the orcs for a while. No, there's a lot of similarities to them, and the gameplay itself is there. So, extremely high production values. Good, solid, keeps you involved the whole game. If you like combat, if you like building an empire and fighting other people and constantly this tug of war back and forth, that whole dudes on a map thing, Axis and Allies and that stuff back in the day, this is the evolution of that coming out now. Highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Just shut the door.